One big joke. It's a fucked up world. Here we are in. I ain't going nowhere.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Reason Reborn. I am here with my co-host, Donald J. Cardiac Sumo Trump. How are you doing today, sir?
Better than anyone else. No, I'm doing good. Finished off Cyberpunk a couple of days ago, so I feel like a huge weight is off my shoulders.
A weight? Why is it a weight?
Because of the way I play games, and I've told you this when I was playing like Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us 2, Red Dead. Like I just have to binge through whatever game I play, and some games are too big to do that in a healthy way. So,
I mean, if you got the time, sure, why not? You wouldn't be like me then,
I don't know that I had the time more than I just went and sacrificed an unhealthy amount of sleep and did it. Because part of the reason I have to binge like that is because if, like, say, I go through my regular work day and I haven't finished a game or finished a book or whatever, it's distracting to me. Like, it kind of distracts from the other things I'm doing mentally. So I always have to like focus on it and finish it off because I don't like to have too many things on my plate at once. So it's more like, all right, I'm enjoying the game, but I got to cut this off so I can get back to work because I have some upcoming release stuff to work on. So not a weight in that it was bad, just I have bad tendencies.
Gotcha. Well, you're the type of person that likes to run around everywhere and do everything, and you make it worse on yourself, to be quite honest.
Pretty much. Well, a lot of gamers like maybe go through a game twice or whatever number of times. If I finish a game, I typically don't want to ever touch it again. So I got to get the full experience the first time through.
Oh, wow. I just see Microsoft just unlisted that game, by the way. That's a discussion to have. No, because everybody's been making such a big deal. Like, oh, my God, Sony took it off. Sony is just so horrible. No, they're smart business people.
Yeah, I saw Microsoft took it off earlier today.
Which means this video I recorded last night I need to delete because I clearly did not know that until now. Oh, well. Thanks, Microsoft, for just like destroying my content. Anyway, let's talk about people destroying the country instead of people destroying the content. So, I'm going to try to make this a really quick show, partially because I know, like, at the end, we're going to go in on the Obama book again, because I finally finished it, y'all. I finished A Promised Land, and I have feelings. It's part of the reason why I have this as my picture today, because I'm putting it up here so I can remember to keep my hatred for this man right now. And I'll tell you why. I can't stand this motherfucker Barack Obama. Barack Hussein Obama. God damn you, motherfucker. By the way, if you've ever wondered why I don't have my camera on, my lighting is fucked up and I need to replace it. And I just decided to be lazy. So that's why I don't have the camera on anymore. Besides, it's more fun putting up these pictures right now. But I will soon get that corrected and we'll be back. You guys see my ugly face. Then you can see how horrible my hair looks as it hasn't been cut since fucking whew. Last time I had a haircut, maybe March, April. It's bad. It's really, really bad, y'all. But anyway, so hold on. This week, politics is kind of like, I won't say slow, but not as, I guess, crazy. maybe like it's crazy, but it's weird because the things that are going on are kind of like the normal shit that we griped about, or at least the normal that came about during the Obama administration. Even though it's like some batshit insane stuff going on, compared to what we had the last 4 years, it's pretty mundane, wouldn't you say?
Sure. I think some of that is that I don't know how quiet he is in practice. I don't pay as much attention to him now, but Trump doesn't feel as boisterous. Obviously, there are the attempts to, try to overthrow the election results, but other than that, he's not really going on TV and talking shit and tweeting as much, or at least we're not paying as much attention to it. And there's a couple of stories that are garnering most of the attention, specifically the COVID-19 vaccines from Pfizer, Moderna, BioNTech, getting their approval and beginning distribution. So I think there's a couple of things that are the focus right now, and the big noisemaker is a little bit more quiet than usual.
Yeah, he's definitely like calmed it down a bit, I guess. I think part of the reason is he's probably just, trying to formulate his escape plan. That's what I think. Like, I really think that he is trying to figure out how he's going to get out of this goddamn country before the wave of litigation from places come at him. Because the state of New York is coming for him. Tish James is going to go after this man with all her might. Like, now that he doesn't have presidential protection.
Maybe. I honestly think he's just sort of, as he's coming to accept that his attempts to overthrow results are not going to work, I think he's just mentally given up because, let's be honest, did he ever really do work of any kind?
No. Never in his life.
For him, the presidency is not a job as such, so much as a point of fame, I guess, a celebrity sort of position. And, he might have fun going to rallies and getting people all excited or talking shit on Twitter, but knowing that there's no real future ahead at this point, why fucking bother? So I think maybe I'm not giving him enough credit, but I think he's too lazy to even be formulating a real escape plan. I think he's just sort of dicking around. That's what I imagine.
Sitting back in his bedroom, eating his fish fillets and drinking his Diet Coke.
Pretty much. I think other people around him might be, starting such escape plans, but I doubt he's putting in the serious work of thinking through it.
Well, we've seen people do their escape plans anyway. Recently, as Attorney General William Barr, quitting before, and we've seen a couple of people make their exits now that they, now that the administration is pretty much coming to a close, they're getting out now. Before, I don't know. Yeah, I think with some they're getting up before they get caught. I think others, it's just they feel like it's a good time now. They don't have to have any excuse. They can just leave. Hey, right.
When I said escape plan for him, I guess I meant more shoring up his legal defenses for the coming battles he will be facing on many fronts. And has been. It's not like they're going to be newly started battles. It's just, like you said, he'll have less of the presidential protection behind him. I'm wondering, his presidency is coming to a close. He'll be out in a couple of months, but we never really did get those tax returns, did we?
Yeah.
And that, to me, is a huge fucking problem.
That's
he was
the
in
thing.
office for 4 years.
You're not going to have Mnuchin to hold him anymore. So that shit's coming out. That's why I think part of it is he's kind of maybe trying to figure out something. I don't think it's something serious or a foolproof plan, but I think he's just trying to come to terms with like all the shit that he's avoided it's all exposed. You know, it's all gonna be exposed. Like I heard somebody mention one time a while ago how like if Biden wants, he can literally just release the Mueller report to the public now, and you know things like that.
Sure. I mean, it's fine that he won't be able to get away with the stuff he's been doing anymore. But I guess my point was that we have allowed a president to sit for 4 years and not get that kind of stuff. Like, it still kind of feels like a defeat to me, but, or at least an illustration of why we need to codify some of this shit into law. Because I don't see it as like something to celebrate that, like, yeah, he doesn't have the protections anymore, and now they're going to finally get him. It's like, well, fact is, you sat there 4 years, president of the country, able to get away with this kind of stuff. And what? He can get away with it until he leaves? Like, no, you should be able to get a president for that kind of shit.
Yeah, I mean, well, technically you can. They just refuse to do it. That's why he got impeached. Yeah, and that's why they refuse to. I won't say refuse to try to impeach him again, but I think after the first impeachment, they were just like, "Is it worth it?" Because McConnell and them were just going to protect the fuck out of him. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't have said can get him. I want a government that has the will to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I wish they can get him at normal terms. Because if they could have got him at normal terms, like how everybody else has to do things, it would have been a lot more easier. Because again, Tish James would have gladly just served them papers, and they would have had a trial in New York. And who was going to stop her? Because that's state business.
Fair enough.
But part of his quiet, I guess, is affecting things because of the COVID relief. We've been having debates over stimulus checks. The distribution of the vaccine is now coming in question. Have you heard the story that Pfizer said that they have 1 million doses that are just sitting there, but they have no instruction from the government as to what to do with them, and that also they've halted the release of some of the original planned dosages to states.
I heard a bit of it.
Yeah,
it's kind of surprising.
Yeah,
to see
and
that.
no one's really saying anything about it. So it's confusion and chaos. So he still is having a Trump effect on things. And then, of course, even though he's not participating in the relief package debate, they're holding things up. In fact, they were close to, I think it was one senator from Wisconsin who refused to vote for the package that would have passed because he doesn't want to give people $1,200 in release. And I'm sure that was instructed to him by Mitch McConnell because Mitch McConnell is against the $1,200 as well. So the whole thing that's holding up stimulus relief at this point is whether or not the Republicans are willing to give taxpayers a stimulus check of $1,200, which is fucking insane.
Certainly. I can't remember when the first and last one went out, but
that would be
months.
in, I want to say April. Yeah, April.
Okay. So say this gets passed and then you get that next 1,200. That's not very comforting or impressive, really, for almost a year of this.
Yeah, so the government is giving you $2,400, and people have been posting the comparison where most places are giving everybody $2,000 a month for at least the past 6 months.
Sure.
In countries with smaller economies than we have. you know, they're pouring money to their people to make sure, one, their economy is still, you know, not thriving, but still functioning at a decent enough pace. Um, and two, to make sure that people aren't fucking unable to feed themselves or at least pay some of their bills and keep going. But this country, people getting evicted, people not being able to buy food, people having to be in food lines. Like someone said it best, like we're borderline a third world country. Because when did you ever see massive food lines in the United States and things like that? Like I can't like outside of the Great Depression, I can't think of any time like similar to this. And this isn't as bad as the Great Depression. I'm not trying to compare the two, but just the idea of the like things that people have to deal with. Um, it shouldn't be like this.
Oh yeah, when you bring up the other countries of comparison, I mean, as far as the economics goes, sure, there is reasonable concern to have about pretending that you have infinite money and can just give it to the population all the time. But certainly we should be doing better than this. Especially when we have to wrestle with the fact of, maybe people getting evictions, people not being able to pour their own money into the economy if they lose their jobs. Like, it's not like as simple as just saying like, all right, we have all these finite resources to give to the public. It's how do we begin to recover if too many people lose their jobs and homes? It's a very long-lasting issue. And the fact that there's been such a battle in Congress every month about doing this, to the point where we're still arguing about only the second check, like at the rate we're going, let's say, they approve that stimulus and then they give it out. Maybe COVID will be fucking eradicated by the time they get around to the third, and maybe the economy takes too much damage in the meantime. Like
I think a lot of people are resting on the idea of Biden being more like, responsive, but I don't know.
It's an illustration of how slow moving it feels like the government can be at times, as they are, going through these debates all the time. Congress is always, not always, but feels like it's locked up pretty often. It's like, if we can't even get this kind of stuff done while so many Americans are in trouble, it doesn't inspire confidence at all.
Yeah, it doesn't.
If you can't unite and galvanize and make progress over immediate issues like this, when can you? Well, maybe in like war or something. Like if the country was attacked by another country, that would unite people well enough, but like that shouldn't be what it takes.
Yeah. No. And it's just weird. Like I'm gonna keep my first thought in check because we're gonna talk about the book later. But it's just this weird thing where the fight against this makes no sense. They are trying to like make this like argument that it's too much money for us to be spending. It's too much money for us to be spending. In a country that spends like so much money on things that, aren't beneficial to the overall, like there's some benefit, but not to the point where it demands that much. Like military spending. Military spending is always the best example because there's like an enormous amount of money spent on military projects that have nothing to do with like having troops in occupancy in other countries or things like that. It's just contract after contract to these people. And like you don't really have anything tangible to return for it. It's like the military budget is just out of control. So much money is dedicated to that. But not enough money is dedicated to places like education and stuff like that. So how is it that the military tends to seem to be able to get infinite funding, but other things, including this relief package, like why is this the line? You're okay with overspending in areas like that, but you have an issue with spending tax money to something that's going to be beneficial to your economic system.
Well, a lot of the conservative and libertarian arguments I hear around, the economy in general, they never feel quite right because they're always bitching about wasting money and doing this, but they put up with extreme inefficiencies in many sectors. You mentioned maybe military and education, but I think a lot about healthcare system in our country, which, as is often noted, more expensive than anyone else and does not offer better treatment, really, in comparison to other industrialized nations in the West. That by itself is a stupid waste of money that we have in this country, and yet a lot of those people are perfectly willing to put up with it and defend it as the proper result of free markets. So I always get a little irritated hearing these arguments like, oh, this is too much money and this is too much, If you're not going to be consistent about saving money, then stop pretending. This is not about financial responsibility, financial safety. It's purely about not feeling like people who are in trouble should get that sort of help, that sort of, personal responsibility, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps sort of attitude, no matter what the situation is. To me, it's purely a cultural sort of reaction. It's not really a rational analysis of, economic factors. So let's stop pretending that's the reason.
Right. But it's the argument that it's always made. And it's
and to be clear, I'm not saying that there aren't economic, considerations to be made. It is a decent amount of money and whatnot, but the point remains, it's still something we ought to do, and the arguments against doing it are not that strong. I also don't offer any alternatives as to what to do if not that. So, well, I guess maybe the alternative is just everybody dies. I don't know.
Well, not everybody, because those who have the financial means, who are in the specific tax brackets, they're fine. And sure. It's just a weird. It feels like, you said that like everybody else just died thing, but it feels like that's kind of their goal. It's like their Drago from Rocky IV. If he dies, he dies. Like they're not concerned about the well-being of other people as long as they win. I don't know. It's really, really, it's frustrating. It's disheartening. And it's bewildering because, again, these are the people right now who currently have the power. Like, I know we're all looking at the Georgia elections, the runoffs, as like a ray of sunshine and hoping that, Ossoff is able to beat Purdue and that Warnock is able to beat Loeffler and give us an advantage. But even with that, there's still a climb. There's still a fucking climb. So.
I was listening to a talk just a couple hours ago, podcast, and they were discussing a lot of things about altruism and charity and whatnot. And, they brought up it's a group of people generally that, especially if they're particularly financially successful, always have this attitude of, those people in general want to feel like you shouldn't help anyone else. Maybe you want to teach them to fish as opposed to just give them the fish. But hey, I built myself up and so should everyone else. I wasn't born rich and I made it and they should be able to do it too. And there's a lot wrong with that argument, as they pointed out. But one of the things that he pointed out that I think gets ignored a lot is that even if it were true that you were really self-made, which even that's just sort of a myth, let's be honest, if we wanted to break it down. But even if you accepted that argument that you made yourself and whatever, that does not suddenly mean that you don't have any moral responsibility to help other people. So say, and I'm kind of branching off an illustration made by philosophist Peter Singer. You know, say you're like walking around like a pond or something and you see some kid drowning and you're like, well, I learned how to swim and they should be able to do it too. Like, you wouldn't make that kind of fucking argument, right? You'd go in there and save that kid from drowning in a pond. So I don't understand the instinct to say, I had to work hard, I had to earn it, everyone else has to. You know, if they're in a bad position, it's because of their own bad financial decisions and gambles and blah, blah, blah. Like, well, that's kind of neither here nor there. So it's kind of a stupid fucking argument.
It is, because not all of them made it because they outwork people. Like, look at our president. When has he ever outworked any fucking body? Like,
oh, sure. I mean, if you want to get into that part of it too, there's a lot of luck that people take for granted in their lives, even the supposed self-made man. So say, you know, being born in like America versus being born in like a country currently undergoing civil war, you know what I mean? That immediately makes you more likely to succeed, even if you would have been born in poverty either way. Now, if you want to take like basketball, for example, or sports in general, but I pick basketball. Sure, athletes work very hard, but you did not earn being 7 feet tall. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
we're born with that.
History has shown there's so many people with talent in sports. Sports is a good thing to bring up, by the way, because history has shown there's been so many people who have even been considered more talented than the people that we consider the greats of certain sports that never got the opportunity, just partially because of luck or where they fell, things that happen, injuries. I've seen so many people fall to the wayside because they had a like devastating injury that ended their career, and people always lament like, wow, just imagine what it would have been if they didn't get hurt. Like, that shit is a tried and true tale. And it's the same thing, you know, when it comes to financial things. You know, what if you would have got this break? What if certain things didn't happen? What if at the time you were about to get that loan, you didn't lose your job, or you know, just happened to be one payment away from clearing your credit to be able to get, you know, in good standing enough to get something. Just like, there's a lot of like small little odd bumps in the road in life in general that could throw you off, or that could make the difference between you being successful, quote unquote, in people's eyes, and you not succeeding to your full potential. Yeah.
And none of them are things that you choose. You know, I don't want to get too deep into like the free will arguments and all that shit, but even genetically, I mentioned being tall, but things like maybe being naturally good at music, or, you know, stuff like that. Like,
I mean, yeah, but no, that's a good point. Like, again, if you're 7 feet tall, that don't mean you're going to be good at basketball.
No.
This could be just you're just 7 feet tall, but you don't have the hand coordination and the agility needed to do that. Like, it happens. There are plenty of people who are tall or big or whatever that don't, you know, fit in certain things.
And that's not to discount effort per se. It's just to say, I would say the vast majority, and, you know, if you want to take it to the extreme, I'd say ultimately everything is sort of a matter of luck in many regards, from where you're born to when you're, you know, even when, like, I, as a black man, you know, I have a 6-figure salary currently. That would have been so easy to pull off 50 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, or 100 years ago, or whatever, when I would have been a slave. Like, there is a certain amount of luck that I have in being born, you know, in the 1990s and becoming an adult now versus having been born a couple hundred years ago.
Yeah, God forbid you if you were born in Jim Crow. You wouldn't have been nowhere near where you are now. None of us would be.
So,
yeah.
like all these factors that you just got to take for granted that are largely responsible for where you are make it kind of ridiculous to just say, this person is self-made. They did it purely on hard work. Not really, if you really want to analyze cause and effect on that level. But again, even if I was willing to accept the argument of being self-made, it doesn't matter, because that is not a good argument for not helping other people. The same way I use that analogy of, seeing a kid drowning in like a pond. You don't have to go through this deliberation of, well, they should be able to swim because I learned how to swim, and, fuck them. Like, that's a stupid thing to say. It's not really relevant. So there is no good argument I'm hearing, at least in that sort of cultural vein. It's nonsense straight through.
Yeah.
And I think that's informing, to me, it's informing a lot of their reaction toward not giving out those sort of stimulus checks. It's not sound economic analysis. Again, I could accept that there is some economic concerns to be had, and we should talk about them and be honest about what this kind of stuff is going to cost us, but not just listen to this gut reaction that, fuck them.
Yeah. And I think that's the part of the thing that bothers me, because people sit and pore over these things and come up with, I don't think that people are just throwing out numbers and deciding, okay, we'll give this much and stuff like that. Like, you have experts and analysts that can tell you how this shit works. Like, it's not like you don't have the tools necessary to figure out exactly what's going on, or like how this will work. And I think that's one of the things that bothers me the most. It's because a lot of these negative comments, or the resistance to things like that, are just people just saying things because it's what they think people want to hear, as opposed to actually giving a legitimate argument as to why you don't think this should be done.
I think on top of that, maybe I feel like I'm tearing too into Republicans and even libertarians, but often it feels like just searching for reasons to say no to something, not really offering an alternative, like I was saying earlier. If we say the problem here is, the economics of the situation, people being evicted from homes, people not being able to feed their families, all this stuff, they don't really feel as interested in offering a solution to that problem as sort of stopping this potential solution. It would be one thing if you just didn't agree with doing this and then had another idea that we could, talk about, but that often isn't the case. It's just purely, to capitalize off the love for free markets. It's sort of every man for themselves, and helping anybody else is a burden that we ought not undertake. Or at least not forcibly, I guess, if you want to take the more libertarian approach. But it's, like, I'm a software engineer. It would be like somebody, like if we pointed out a bug and I offered a potential fix and they said, we're not doing that, and never gave me an alternative for what we should do to fix it. And I'm pretty much just suggesting that we should just live with the fact that this bug exists. You know what I mean? It's not really a rational way to approach things.
No, and it's sad because overall, there's just really no serious rational reason why we don't have a lot of things. You mentioned healthcare. Like, screaming socialism makes no sense, because it's not like you're trying to convert the whole United States government into a communist regime. You just want to make affordable healthcare, or at least give people healthcare so that you can maintain a healthy society and healthy workforce that can continue to generate money for the economy, like other countries such as Canada do. Like,
I mentioned it a bit last week when I was talking about how it feels like the Republican Party's primary goal is to be an obstruction. Like, if you look at the numerous problems we have in our society that we could be addressing, it often feels like they just don't have any real interest in addressing them. You know, like it's almost like, why do you, for certain politicians, why do you have this job? For certain, people on the internet that just talk politics in general, it's like, why do you even touch these things when you don't seem to have any clear interest in doing anything about it? Like you seem mostly just inclined to just stop any attempt, like climate change, for example. The big move from a lot of people is just to deny that climate change is a thing. But even from people who are willing to acknowledge it, they barely have any teeth behind doing anything about it other than just saying we should enable free markets to, come up with a solution for this and this. It's like, do you want to solve the problem at all, really? Or are you just here to dick around?
Well, no, even the more perfect example is, of course, ACA. They have died in Florida, because we've discussed this before too. ACA is based on a Republican created plan that was created by, oddly enough, a Republican that they thought was good enough to beat Obama, the guy who they hate for ACA. It's his fucking shit. And they're so dead set on getting rid of it, but they have no plan as to what they want to replace it with. They're like, no, we're going to get rid of this and we're going to give people a proper thing. And when people are like, well, what's your plan? I don't know. What's the point of getting rid of this if you don't have an actual plan for
I'm not some huge Romney lover, but that's a good example of what I mean. Like his administration, what state was he in? I can't even remember now. Okay. They identified, problems with their citizens being able to afford healthcare as a problem and proposed and implemented a solution. That feels like somebody actually doing a job. Yeah. Problem, solution. And and yet that sort of attitude just does not seem to exist in much of the Republican Party right now, where it's like, problem? No, it isn't. So it's like, what?
Right. Like, it don't bother me, so what the problem is. It's very, very weird. Okay, so we're getting sidetracked on the stories because I'm about to send you some shit because I need to vent about this. In fact, my headphones fell off my head as I leaned back and threw my head up and screamed to the heavens, what the fuck? So let me send you this link now, and then after you see it, allow me to go in on this, on this, because this kind of compounds the thing that I'm saying now about how they really don't have anything. The whole, this is your concern. Hundreds of thousands of people dead. Millions sick. Problems getting the vaccine out now that you finally have got to a point where you have a black vaccine. Millions of people, on the brink of eviction, foreclosure, starving, all that shit. Chaos all around. This is what the Vice President of the United States is focused on.
Sorry, I was just trying to look up what Semper Supra meant. Always above.
Why don't you just
you
first
kind
of all,
ranted real hard, but didn't tell the people what specifically?
No, because I was waiting for you to finish reading, and then now that I know you went. Mike Pence did a press conference today to announce the official term for the men and women who are part of the Space Force. Again, we talked about fucked up wasteful spending. You just expanded your military and added another budget to your military for a force that at the moment ain't got shit to do. Who we sending up in space to patrol? Is Al-Qaeda all of a sudden on the moon and we gotta go fucking root their base out there? Is that where the leader of Al-Qaeda is now? He flew to the moon? What do you get on fucking Virgin? a Virgin rocket, like one of those test rockets, and then got off or something? What is this? So Mike Spence did a conference to announce that we will officially refer to the men and women of the Space Force as Guardians. Sir, who the fuck showed him Destiny?
I thought it was from Guardians of the Galaxy, but
And it's funny just you say that because the first comment, somebody was like, "What, of the Galaxy?" But no, in Destiny, if you've ever played the game Destiny, that's what you're called, Guardians. So, but it could be Guardians of the Galaxy because he probably saw that like announcement that there's going to be a Guardian of the Galaxy Christmas special in a couple of years, and he was like, "Hey, that has a nice ring to it." These are Guardians.
Sure. It's not like they're uninclined to take from pop culture. I mean, their logo is essentially a Star Trek ripoff, so I don't think it's that bad a thing.
Tricorder. It's the tricorder. They really took the tricorder from Star Trek and made it there. I mean, not the tricorder. I'm sorry, the badge that they have to communicate that they like tap on their chest. Like, but yeah, that.
Which. Yeah.
But they probably will take the tricorder now that I think of it, because that's going to be what they're going to use to scan everything, and then they're going to have phasers.
I remember when the Space Force was first discussed, and I must have said it on a podcast, but it's a real shame that it's this administration doing it, because I would love if, as America, we had a bigger focus on space in general and science in general. But, you know, to feel like, I don't know, you got to grow up hearing about, like, the great space race and all this shit and all the interest the country had at the time. But I didn't really grow up in a country that had that much of a communicated interest in space.
It was a big thing in the 60s and like 70s because it was a new thing. And it was kind of like, it's kind of sad because a lot of the push for NASA and the space program was simply just to like beat the communists to like an achievement. It really was just like the communists are doing this thing too, and they're trying to like be the first. We can't let them beat it because, you know, they put the dog in space first. So we were like, well, if they got a dog in space first and had the first living thing in space, we're going to have the first man in space. And it just became like, you know, a dick measuring contest type thing. Because let's be honest, for a long time, going to space was just the thing to do, to say you did it. If you think about it, like I've never really, besides satellite launches and telescope launches, they didn't always do the research thing. It was just, you just want to send somebody and have them, like, you know, go to space. But as time went on, and as I guess they got over the dick measuring thing, they started to find legitimate reasons to send people to space. Sort of. I don't know.
You know, it feels growing up like, you know, obviously we can travel to space. I'm not saying there's no work that has been done, but often when you bring up traveling to space or doing research, a lot of people's instinctive response is, you know, why are we doing that when we don't even know enough about the oceans here on Earth? And it's like, it's sort of this weird resistance I feel from a lot of people to even touch space. It's like a worthy point of exploration and study. So in theory, I would have loved to see the government like really taking on space and shit, but it's this government, right? So like, it makes me feel bad because I'm watching a bunch of clowns try to do it, essentially. I don't know where the Space Force shit will go in the new administration. Maybe, I don't know if they'll scrap it or if they'll actually try to make something legitimate of it, or what the strategy is. It just feels like such a fucking shame that it's them doing this and making such a joke out of it.
And like, I see like part of the reason that he did it today is because today's the birthday of the Space Force. That's just actually been a thing for a year. Good Lord.
I mean, sure. And I expect any new branch or whatever to take a while to build up, but the fact that from the very moment that they brought this up, it was essentially a joke and like nobody could take it seriously is
So,
just kind of
okay.
disheartening. So
I'm looking through this to just kind of figure out why. And Space Force, at Space Force DOD, if you want to follow them on Twitter, y'all, they tweeted today after a year-long process that produced hundreds of submissions and research involving space professionals and members of the general public, we can finally share with you the name by which we will be known, Guardians. The name Guardians connects to our proud heritage and culture, to the important mission we execute 24/7, protecting the people and interests of the U.S. and its allies.
I kind of wish too that it wasn't casted, and maybe this is just my personal taste. Like, it has been erected as a branch of the military, I guess. And I'm not saying that we ought not care about, safety from space. Asteroids may be coming through space. There's a bunch of shit from satellites just kind of floating around in space or in orbit to be worried about. But you kind of made it sound like we have this army that we're sending up in space to battle the fucking aliens. You know what I mean? Like, it already wasn't a good framing to do any of this. I would have preferred a more scholarly, like, all right, we have this branch of government that focuses just on studying and all this shit in space without making it feel like we're deploying troops to the moon. You know what I mean? I'm not saying we're ultimately doing that, but it is not good messaging, at least.
Nah, it's not, especially when you say stuff like the name connects to our proud heritage and culture, to the important mission we execute 24/7, protecting the people and interests of the U.S. and its allies. What the fuck is the Space Force doing to protect our interests and our allies' interests 24/7? That is full of like heritage and culture.
I think you should definitely make it more clear than just saying it if you want to.
Like, what are you doing? I don't even know what the fuck you actually are doing. And all these space professionals and members of the general public. This is why I say it's Destiny, or I can go with your Guardians of the Galaxy thing. They said that it was a name that involved research with space professionals and the general public. If they let the public get on it, they had to come up with it. And they just heard some kid go, "Hey, you're the Guardians of the Galaxy, man," and some dumb shit. But this is the reason why I connected to Destiny is because I'm sorry, forgive me. But when someone gets like, shot in the military, they scream "man down." All I can hear now is the voice of the ghost and Destiny screaming, "Guardian down," like the game. It's going to be Destiny jargon. It's sad. This is his legacy to us, by the way. Out of everything that he's done, this is going to be a lasting legacy unless somebody dismands it.
I mean, ultimately, I would like to see it become something.
But what? We have NASA. That's the thing. We have fucking NASA. So research in space and space explorations are gone. Like, unless you're going to get like space marines like in the Aliens movie and send them to planets, to fight fucking, goddamn aliens.
I mean, if you want to combine them in conjunction with NASA or something like that, there might be some reorgs and shit that can happen, but I don't know. May as well not.
Like, what combat could you have in space? There's no gravity.
I don't think it needs to be purely combat based.
But that's what I'm saying. But that's the thing. It's a military force.
The military doesn't only do combat; they also, for example, study environmental shit.
I agree. You do have the Army Corps of Engineers that do a lot of stuff
But
environmentally.
ultimately,
But
yeah, they need to explain what the fuck
he
they
said
want to do.
that when he announced this, they were supposed to protect us from our enemies in space. So clearly, you trying to like you go find some bugs like Starship Troopers and squish them.
Either that, or you're concerned that our enemies are going to start deploying to space, and you want to get there first. Which, to me, you would have the opposite problem. So if we start deploying to space, other countries might be like, "All right, well, can't let America be the only motherfuckers with soldiers above our heads."
I disagree. I don't think anybody's willing to waste their money.
Yeah, I guess it depends on perceived threat, but if I saw Russia suddenly deploying a bunch of shit up there that looked military and
okay, if they do that, then we got Moonraker. It's a fucking James Bond movie. Good lord, like it's
I don't know. Like I said, I kind of get sick of hearing about it without any clear discussion about what the purpose is and what it does. Like I was just going through their Twitter a bit.
Yeah, I've been looking at it too, and I just don't.
Like it just feels opaque. Like there's no clear. And maybe I need to just go to their site and read more. But I'm like, I don't really see what it is you're attempting to do. Like 5 years from now, what do you expect to look like? Like it's just an
I give
awful
them credit for
communication
trying to like be active and proactive and try to like reassure the people we're doing something.
I mean, surely you could come up with something valuable to do.
The Star Trek communicator. Like, there's nothing original about this shit. Oh, I'm so disappointed in Neil Tyson for sending them Neil deGrasse Tyson for sending them a birthday wish.
It doesn't bother me too much that it's not original. I mean, the fact that a lot of you nerds
they
out
got
there
William
watch Star
Shatner
Trek
giving a
growing
birthday
up.
wish. Of course, William Shatner is going to give him a birthday wish. Why not?
Like a lot of people shit on them for like having the Star Trek symbol. Essentially, I'm like, look, generations of you fucking nerds grew up loving space because of Star Trek. So like, it's not to me crazy or anything.
No, it's corny. It's corny. It's fucking corny.
Also, is liking Star Trek, but
oh man.
Real men like Mass Effect.
Yeah, like if you're gonna give me N7 shit, all right, I might be with you.
But I don't. Even then, Guardians.
Guardian down. That's all I can hear in my head now. Now I want to play Destiny. God damn it.
Just thinking about this, all it makes me think is, names and bullshit aside, like it just reminds me that I don't really know what you're doing. And you want to talk about, use of taxpayer money, like, well, I feel like I should definitely get a clearer explanation of like what's going on here. I don't know what their budget is either. But yep. But yeah, everybody look up to the sky and salute the Space Force. But to your point about the legacy that he's leaving, the interesting thing is I could see a future administration really making something of this. And maybe our public opinion about it changes to be very positive, and then I don't know if Trump will still be alive by that point, but his supporters certainly would be like, "See, that was Trump shit." It's like, was it really? Because they just said that they wanted to do a thing called Space Force, and then left, and then somebody else actually did the work of putting it together and making it a thing. So that's going to be funny if it amounts to something valuable, and then they really try to sit here and be like, Trump was a visionary. He did it. Knowing full well that future administrations just looked at it and were like, well, It's sitting there, so let's go. Are you looking up something else to say?
I'm just sitting here, I don't know. I really don't know. Like, maybe I should turn on my PS4 and play some Destiny now.
Maybe they have like some sort of financial ties to who the fuck makes Destiny? Bungie? Maybe they have some sort of like marketing deal. Like, we're gonna see very interestingly designed uniforms. Or new space suits,
do they have like? Well, I guess they kind of have uniforms now, but yeah, what is the official Space Force uniform? Because it kind of just looks like what they. Now I had to Google this. See, we've gotten on a weird tangent. Because it just looks like Air Force uniforms, to be quite honest.
Yeah, well.
Like just regular military, like they just with the Space Force patch. Like, yeah. Like their dress blues look just like regular Air Force dress blues to me. Like at least be like the main Marine Corps and have a like fucking dope ass dress uniform. Like this shit is kick ass.
Is this like a symbol? Am I not understanding this?
What?
Like I'm watching like a couple astronauts, they wished, the Space Force first birthday, whatever, and they were like Semper Supra. I'm like, why are they doing this? Is that a thing? Is that a military thing that I don't know?
I don't know. Maybe I that's a good question. Maybe
like there was two of them there and they both did it, and I'm like, I don't know if they were just saying number one or like what the fuck that was. Like,
I don't know.
The fact that I don't even know if that was like some sort of official hand side for them, it's like, just further proof. Like I don't know anything about this thing. So shame on me, guys. Maybe I should read more about it.
Should you read more about the Space Force? I mean, should you?
It exists. It is part of the government. We should know something about it.
Also, Semper Supra is not cooler than Plus Ultra. So get the fuck out of here with that.
Did somebody say it was?
Plus Ultra.
I feel like it would be weird if the government started saying Plus Ultra. I'll live with Semper Supra.
I don't, because again, it's theft in a way. Because you have it's kind of, to me it feels like a characterization of the Marine Corps' motto of Semper Fi.
I mean, they are a branch of the military, so like, why shouldn't they use the same sort of Latin expressions? Or should they have just continued to use Semper Fi? So like, I'm not as good. I don't know. These names and stuff don't bug me. I think some of them are fine.
Shit, you took the logo. Just go full Star Trek. Just say to boldly go where no man has gone before.
I'm sure somebody either has or will say that, and then we're gonna be shitting on them. I'd be like, whatever,
Just have fucking Captain Picard read the intro of Space, the Final Frontier. These are the guardians of the space. Oh my god! I feel like they're gonna do it. I can't wait now.
We'll wait and see. But I mean, I think the point you were first making about like where we put money, I am curious what other people who have a problem with, say, the stimulus checks, for example, would say about that. Again, I don't really know how much money we're putting into the Space Force because I haven't paid much attention to it, so no idea what their budget looks like off the top of my head.
Who knows? I'm gonna have to do some research because we're getting sidetracked. So we talked about COVID relief and their like deal with that. Oh my god, I've totally forgotten our agenda now because this shit is just. I can't believe this. Jesus Christ! Like seriously. The Georgia runoff. So far, they have had. I'm getting it together, people. Jesus, I'm just yeah. So the Georgia runoffs have been going pretty interesting right now. They've had record early voting. Actually, the early voting has exceeded the early voting for the presidential race so far, which is pretty damn dope. Let's just hope that this will pay off in the long run for the Democrats. Now, it seems like, going back to Trump and his activity, that he hasn't really been as supportive as he first claimed he was going to be. I know he did a couple of rallies, but those were mostly for him to bitch and moan about the presidential election. And now he's been very, very quiet on that. There's no really big push from him. And I honestly don't think that there's that big of a push from the Republican Party at this point, maybe. I don't know if it's because of what's going on with the COVID relief debates or anything like that, but I find it interesting because I would expect to hear a lot more about this, and you really kind of don't. Been kind of a pretty quiet thing now that all the debates are gone. How confident are you in the chances for Ossoff and Warnock right now?
It's always hard to be confident in a place like Georgia.
I should take offense to that as a native, but I can't because, goddamn it, it's Georgia.
I mean, but it's the same reason I kind of assumed that Florida going for Trump was sort of a given, more or less. Like,
right.
Geography matters. So maybe I'm too cynical. I haven't been getting my hopes up that much. But to your point, there has been pretty impressive turnout. So I would just say I'm on the fence. I don't know. Maybe that's not a satisfying answer for people, but I don't really feel that confident about it. But again, with the record turnouts, it's certainly not impossible.
I think that bodes well for it to have this early turnout because, generally speaking, Democrats will be the ones to take to the polls early to protect themselves and not have to deal with the large crowds on election day. Pretty much the same way it was during the presidential election. I think part of the reason why you saw the chaos that you did with the count for them was because most of the votes had already came in and they weren't expecting to get them. So when they waited on the same day, they didn't realize, like, oh shit, we should have counted these before because now we have the people coming in line that we have to get there. And we got way more than we expected to count in general from early voting.
I will say generally it is kind of frustrating to be in this precarious position of waiting to see how Georgia's runoffs go. Again, I just mentioned that I'm not that confident looking at a place like Georgia to have those kind of votes, but it's just kind of where we are as a nation. It's sort of like, during the presidential, as the voting was being counted, watching that and seeing like, oh my God, I have to put my hopes in places like such and such. Like, that's not going to happen. that kind of sucks. To your point, even if you secure them, it's still kind of, I don't know, it's just frustrating to see that we have to get the majority to be able to accomplish certain things when in an ideal world, certain issues you could just come together on. Like COVID relief, maybe if somebody's watching these hoping that the Democrats win and that they'll be more likely to pass stimulus for COVID relief. Like, we shouldn't be in a position where we have to have Democrats win to secure those kinds of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's the bigger frustration for me, is that we can't just trust that Republicans, even if they disagree with certain things or have different ideas of what should be done, that we don't trust them or can't trust them really to act in a reasonable enough way that them winning doesn't feel like a nightmare.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a depressing thing to say, but we've kind of all implicitly accepted that a lot of the Republicans generally don't have an interest in well-being, and that's already a terrible place to be in. So now we're just sort of like, fuck, hopefully the Democrats can win the majority in the House and Senate. It's like, why the fuck should they have to have the majority to do things that plenty of Americans already agree they ought to do, that the government ought to do?
Yeah, and the funny thing is, how effective is it going to be? I think one of the things is, and one of the reasons why this is so important is, at least if you get a majority, you can possibly get a vote, enough of a vote to be able to get rid of the filibuster. That way, that will null and void a lot of bullshit. So people can't just decide to do a filibuster and try to tie your shit up. Which is, the filibuster is such a dumb thing. I don't know why that was created. Somebody explain to me why it is necessary, or why people feel like it's a good thing in government.
I don't know that too many people feel like it's a good thing now. It's just kind of one of those things that has existed and you kind of put up with because it hasn't gone away. I don't remember why it was created. I feel like this came up even in that book, but it's just not coming to mind.
Well, I don't think he said anything about why it was created specifically, but he complained about it so much. It was the reason why 60 votes was always his target. Because if you got 60, you can't, you pretty much can break a filibuster, because I think that's what you need. I think you need 60 to actually keep us, so if you have 60 people who are going to vote for it, if someone decides to filibuster, then those 60 people can vote to stop it and get rid of it. That's why 60 was always important to him, because it was like his fail-safe in case somebody decided, I want to filibuster. But then they'll look at it as like, well, you got the 60 anyway, so fuck. As soon as I start talking, you're going to call for a vote, tell me to sit my fucking ass down and go about your business. Yeah. Instead of, and that's the reason why it was such a big deal for him, because that's the only way to ensure, hey, if I know I got the votes, most people aren't going to get up and start talking, because it's going to be a moot point for them to even try.
When are we looking to have the results on Georgia's runoffs?
It shouldn't be that long. Let me see when the actual date is.
I'm hoping they make me eat my words and they're like, yeah, decisive win. Again, I don't want to have to rely on Democrats to win all the fucking time across the board just to get things done. Or either political
Okay, so
party.
January 5th is when they have the official. Right now we're just in the early voting period, but January 5th is the actual election day.
Still known about, 2-3 weeks? what is it today? The 18th?
Yeah, today's the 18th. So
December.
yeah, about 2.5 weeks. So, kind of interesting timing because it's right before all the new people get sworn in, I think. For Congress. So that's interesting. Hopefully that'll go well. We can get rid of those two knuckleheads and hopefully move forward and get people get the nominations, of course, for the cabinets. Speaking of it, just to touch on a couple of things, Pete Buttigieg has been nominated for Secretary of Transportation, which I know excites you very much, sir.
Booty Face is the man.
You get to get those smart cars now.
I was listening to him, address that nomination. And I just thought, man, it's so good to hear somebody talk about, problems and like specific parts of it. So, they're just different parts of infrastructure in general to be worked through. And I just thought, man, somebody who actually is analyzing problems and thinking about solutions, treats it like an actual job that they are doing. It's refreshing. Whereas not even just Trump, but a lot of his administration people in there. Again, it felt like they're treating it like a celebrity position where they're just sort of interested in going on TV and maybe throwing red meat to the base and shit like that. It never felt from a lot of them like they had any real aspirations of addressing a problem, whether that be mitigating it or solving it.
Yeah.
But just listening to delve into different facets of the problem, it's oh my God, somebody who actually gives a shit.
Yeah, I've read that a lot of people feel like the consensus is Buttigieg is there to pretty much start with Biden's whole electric car agenda, building 500,000 electric cars and establishing more charging stations in the country, as well as working on our road infrastructure and things like that, which is in desperate need of repair. So kind of do repair the roads and continue to shift to alternative fuel consumption for our vehicles, and a roundabout way of, oddly enough, addressing our environmental issues, because electric cars are better for the environment, of course.
Sure. Bearing in mind certain issues like just the manufacturing of them itself, but yeah, long run, I guess.
Yeah. I do think that you don't really need to utilize. I mean, if you're going to build electrical car factories, I think they're going to be more environmentally efficient anyway, because you're probably removing the need of natural gases as a part of the processing. The whole
I've often said
agenda.
I'm not an environmental specialist or something, but I've often felt that addressing these kind of problems required a many-pronged approach. So, when it comes to electric cars, people will be well, in order to power them with electricity, you still need power plants, that use fossil fuel, and that's still a problem, and blah, blah, blah. And it's well, yeah, the answer to that is also having power plants that use more natural energy anyway, or even nuclear energy, if you want to go that route as well. It's not enough to just address any one thing, because it's a network of problems that need to be kind of attacked together. It is true that if you have more cars running on electricity, that's a bigger strain on the electrical grid. But you also need to improve the electrical grid anyway. So that's not really an excuse to not do it.
Yeah. So yeah, no, all of it has to be, and of course, how you do that is you start to utilize wind solar and wind generated power.
So I appreciate him focusing on it, and we should focus on it. It is a major contributor to, greenhouse gases, but it is something we need to look at from many directions to do it right.
Yeah.
And again, just hearing somebody just go up there and talk about problems and shit, it's like, oh my God. He didn't just come out there and like dick around, like, talk shit to the media, and like, same thing for Biden too. Like, I've never claimed to be in love with this motherfucker, but yeah, it is refreshing to hear somebody talk about wanting to do like a job.
Yeah, and he's picking people who have some type of expertise in these areas and have done the job. And, may not be on a federal level, but in some capacity somewhere. Like he's not just picking somebody, out of nowhere, which it's refreshing. But good for Pete. It would be weird though, because he's trying to be president. And I don't know how many cabinet people have become president, but that would be an interesting transition.
To that point, since he does have like some level of like notoriety after going through the presidential election. I know last week when we talked about the cabinet, I said one advantage to getting people that most people haven't heard of is that they're not going to be a focal point of attack from right-wing media or focused on too much. It is funny that the very next week we hear Buttigieg, is he the first gay cabinet member? Whatever he is.
That's a good question. He may be.
It is interesting that somebody with his notoriety and, as he is being in there, he's probably going to get some media attention, but to eat my own words a little bit, I don't think him being there is a negative thing necessarily, because he is pretty well spoken and comes off pretty good on TV compared to a lot of people.
Yeah.
He's a good speaker. So I do think he might get some attention from right-wing media, but I don't think it's going to hurt them that much.
I mean, they're going to find something to needle. Like, I just was looking through glancing, and people were making a thing that the Secretary of Energy nominee, Jennifer Granholm, while she's known for pushing the agenda for energy efficiency and all of that, apparently she's taken a couple of like donations from energy companies. So, oh my God, like she's in the pocket of big energy. I don't know. Like, is it big oil? No. It's a couple of electric companies or something, but that's going to be an issue. And like the Office of Management and Budget on Nuratan, people have been complaining about her. I'm not exactly too sure on what it is about her that they don't like, but she's been kind of divisive. So they'll find reasons. They will find reasons.
Sure, but there are people who are easier to attack than others, I guess is my point. Like,
yeah,
you could do worse. I'm not as worried about him providing too many opportunities to be like, yeah, fuck this guy. It feels like you're going to have to reach a bit more to make some of those attacks than you would.
Yeah, I mean, for God's sake, you said nothing when a brain surgeon was given the job of housing and urban development.
No, hypocrisy is nothing new. So,
yeah, so please, we know what you're going to do. But all right, I think we're pretty much done with like the major important things. To talk, well, the lesser things, I should say, because the most important thing about this podcast today is A Promised Land by Barrack Obama. I have finally finished it, so I've caught up with you, sir.
Fucking about time, Jesus. I mean, the book's only like 5 pages, and it took you like 10 years.
No, to be fair, I probably did it faster than you if you think about it, because I've only had the book for a couple of weeks. You've had it for how long now?
I finished it. You're making it sound like I finished it today too. I finished it pretty quick.
I don't think so. I feel like you were talking to me for about a good month about that thing.
Is that book even out a month ago? When did that drop? Or at least I only noticed it recently. But
Yeah, it's been exactly a month. So boom, November 17th was when it was published.
well, at least you finally finished it. So kudos.
Yes, I did finish it, and I must say it was quite interesting. But I'm still fucking mad at him. This motherfucker ends the book at pretty much a cliffhanger point. Yeah, Barry, please, for the love of God, make volume 2. If there is a volume 2, there is going to be a volume 2. Like he pretty much said it when he started off with saying like volume 1 in the beginning. Please make it like at least. No, not at least. It has to finish off your presidency. As it stands now, we in the midst of year 2 shit for his presidency, which is goddamn ridiculous, I must say. Like, it's just this so long-winded. Now, it has been a very successful book so far. It's topped over 3 million in sales. It sold about close to 900,000 copies on day one, making it one of the fastest selling books, if not the fastest selling book of all time. And yeah, he's beaten shit like Harry Potter. That's wow, probably. I don't know if he has beaten Harry Potter, but probably did. I mean, it's amazing, but it's a really good book. It gives a lot of great insight on things. A lot of things that I just listened to, and I was just like, wow, he's really saying that stuff. Like the way he would chastise himself and admit to certain wrongs. It was like, wow, this is an adult taking responsibility for his actions. What the fuck is this? Uh, if you're reading it by paper, by the way, it's a 768-page book. If you're listening to it like us, it's about close to 30 hours. And it's unabridged if you listen to the audio version, and it's read by Barack Obama himself, which is just unabridged. Then goddamn, maybe I should have read the book, because it sounds like the book would have been shorter. Like, who would let this man read something unabridged? Do you not know how much he likes to talk? You don't do that. Good Lord.
Well, at least you got the full download of his thoughts, as he, could convey.
I feel for the engineers during the sessions, because they had to be like, dude, can we go to lunch yet? You shut up. Like on a daily basis, running overtime. But no, it's very good to hear some of the things and the ins and out. And this is part of what I wanted to make a call back to, because we were talking about the whole obstruction thing, and he actually mentions he felt like they're basically, that was their whole agenda for anything, was to just be obstructive, which kind of when I heard him say it, I kind of was thinking back to how in previous conversations, at least on my part, I'm not going to claim this for you, but I feel like I've mentioned several times how I feel like Trump has seemingly ushered in a certain new certain new era of tactics for the Republicans. And until he said it, I didn't realize that this is the path that they've always been going down since he got into office, at least, if not before, where they are no longer focused on the actual matters, but they just want to be, you know, on the opposing side of anything liberal or anything, not necessarily anything liberal, but anything that was introduced by a liberal, just to keep liberals from accomplishing things, even if they agree. You know, like you were saying. And that kind of, it struck me hard. It was just like, damn, I don't know why it struck me so hard, but it did. Cause it's like, yo, yeah, this really has just been not just 4 years. It's been almost 2 decades of this shit now. And it's very, very sad.
Yeah, I guess that's partially what I've tried to convey as well, especially after going through the book, because I always kind of felt it growing up, but listening to him kind of go through, you know, year after year, watching people's behavior change and sort of the political climate and temperature change a bit. It's like, I think the last time I brought it up, I said, you could kind of, if you go through the book, you can kind of see the road that we took to get to Trump. Whereas a lot of people look at him as like the progenitor of all these problems. Like he's the beginning of it. It's like, he's really more a result of where we've been going for like at least a decade. You know what I mean? It's like, when you look at how obstructionist the Republicans were becoming year after year, it's like, yeah, you know, I don't know how I didn't see it, but we were kind of always going this way, weren't we? It's like watching a TV show and then like one of the characters that you think is just like a regular good guy or something turns in, you know, suddenly reveals himself as a villain, and then you're like, oh yeah, should have seen that one coming. So I think that's part of why it's interesting to look at it from his perspective as somebody who was the victim. A lot of that shit was just watching the flow of it happen as opposed to seeing it as like one big moment like Trump's election or, you know, any other given thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think because he made the point about when he was talking about how this is what they do. He was like, he made the point in reference to Trump, like the difference between them and Trump is that Trump is just uninhibited and just, you know, basically says whatever, whereas they do it, you know, in a more tactile manner. Like there's a more calculated, you know, strategic way about how they do it. You know, Trump just says whatever and do whatever to fuck with shit. Because he was speaking about the birther thing, and that's where the comparison and the revelation to him came in that part, because he was comparing those, like what Trump was doing, and he's like, you know, Trump's not doing anything different than what they're doing, except where he's just, you know, basically, like I said, unabridged, you know, uninhibited or just fucking wild with it.
And you know, watching how it changed the culture, not just the politicians, but the American culture in general, where I can't remember what the context was, but Obama was talking about feeling the difference on the campaign trails where, you know, people would come out and maybe they have some general disagreement or distaste about Democrats, but the attacks were just becoming kind of uglier and uglier over time because the party kind of noticed that, what is the phrase, throwing them the red meat or whatever was working.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You might get, you know, maybe somebody says something a little fucked up and then they're kind of forced to apologize, but at the same time they notice like, hey, my vote's
like
going
back to the guys calling him a liar during the State of the Union address. He got a bump in his polls and won his election because of it.
It's kind of hard to ignore results. So like, chastising people only works if it's like an actual consequence. If they do something dumb and then they get a reward, how dumb was it really, I guess?
Right.
It suddenly justifies doing it. And then it obviously inclines you toward doing it more. So, but yeah, like I said, Trump is a symptom or a result more than he is a cause in himself. And obviously him being there has caused things to get much worse. It's like there was a steadily building fire, and then he's like a gallon of gas he just threw on it, but it has been burning.
Yeah, but it also makes you wonder, like, what happened to like society that this is so much more acceptable now. That behavior, like, you know, I could pull out my old man, like, see, this is what the social media era does, because you see that a lot, but I really don't, like, honestly know why it got this bad. Like, that type of behavior, like, it's one thing that we behave like that on social media or, you know, amongst us, but these are supposed to be people who, how gotta put it? You're supposed to be professionals. You're supposed to be people who your main focus is doing things the right way. Maybe, I don't know. It's just weird. Like, it just makes no sense to me that this is the behavior that you're getting from your politicians, like, on a regular basis now.
I don't know if I said it on the podcast or just in private conversation, but the other day I said something like, you know, in most fields of, you know, study and work or whatever, you're expected to behave, you know, professionally with, you know, reasonable level of human kindness. You're expected to actually know how to do your job and be competent at it. And I made the point that, like, it feels like politics, which, you know, arguably is the most important profession to a society, is like the field where you have the least expectations for any sort of professionalism, any sort of general decency, even actually knowledge of the job. It's like the one, I shouldn't say one, but it's like the clearest example of like a job in this country where you just have such low expectations, even though it should be the job that has the highest expectations.
Yeah, it makes you think, like, politics has now gotten to the point where, you know, forgive me to all content creators out there, but it's literally like trying to be a streamer or a YouTuber. So you don't necessarily need a degree. You just need for people to pay attention to you. Like, you kind of, like we were saying about being successful, you kind of can just luck up by it, having the most attractive message to people in a lot of ways. Case in point, I saw this today and I didn't mention it, but Tommy Tuberville, the former coach of the Auburn Tigers football team, he did a press conference where he basically came out and was pushing the agenda to continue fighting against voter fraud, and they're like reversing the election and all of that. And he was trying to come up with like some plan or something. I forget what it was. I wasn't really paying attention because I read it's like, yo, you're stupid. And the article made the point of like, yo, I don't think this guy kind of knows what he's fucking talking about, but he probably shouldn't have got the job in the first place. He was just a popular guy who had conservative values and views in a like very conservative state, and he is now, you know, in the U.S. Senate, and he's probably going to fuck that up because he has no real political aspirations or experience other than just to push his personal views.
Do you need anything more?
And that's the problem. Like, you should, like, or at least you should have. If you don't have the experience, you should at least be able to show that you actually do take this. Like Reverend Warnick in Georgia, he's not a professional politician, but if you listen to the guy talk and the things that he said, he clearly is paying attention to what's going on, and actually have, kind of an idea of what needs to be done in it. Or AOC is probably the even more perfect example. Like she, doesn't have the experience, but she clearly knows a lot about how things work, and she applies it properly. Well, in most cases, she applies it properly.
I mean, you asked the question of like how we get here, and I don't have like a deep analysis of it, but there's definitely cultural issues I think we have that help lead to this. So just for example, the disdain we have toward establishment, toward experts in general, like in the sciences, you see all the time, not wanting to believe scientists and doctors, because I Googled this shit. So I obviously know what's going on as well. Somebody who studied for like a decade, not trusting corporations in general, any sort of business giant or anybody with like a high position in the private sector, inherently evil. I mean, hell, I was just playing Cyberpunk, and that's like a big theme with the quote unquote corpo cunts, where all these major businesses sort of took over and really screwed up the world. And it's kind of always been in the American spirit, I guess, but I definitely feel like I see it more and more where there's just this sort of instinctual fuck any kind of establishment, fuck any kind of management level sort of thing in this country. So when they look at their politicians, like, of course they don't care to elect experts who actually know what they're doing. It's purely, I have these cultural values, I'm part of a particular side in this cultural warfare that's brewing, and I want people that kind of represent that, that sort of side, that look, that feeling. But it doesn't, people often don't act when they're talking about a politician as if they are an employer looking at a prospective employee, trying to figure out if they're going to be good at the job. You know what I mean? Yeah. So much as just, is this going to be like a good representative of our team, or at least the opposite of what the other guys are like?
Yeah, it does seem to be more about like whether you feel about certain things, as I do, more than whether you actually have ideas of how to fix things and make things better for those who feel like us. Like that's a weird thing that I found in the Republican Party, is that it's mainly just picking people who share the same views as you, but not picking somebody who, going back to what we were saying earlier, has solutions to the things that you see as problems. They just ride the wave of the rhetoric, and then when they get there, it's just like, okay, we'll just keep riding the wave of the rhetoric. Again, ACA. They rolled that Obamacare shit into the office, and then when it was time to step up and replace Obamacare, like they said, it's like, well, we don't know what the fuck we gonna do. We just thought y'all thought that shit was cool.
I mean, I didn't focus on the Republicans when I said that, but I feel like I see it across the board. Like when I see all the excitement for Bernie,
yeah, you definitely.
And I'm not trying to shit on Bernie, but like, it often feels like they're resonating with his rhetoric and how he talks, and how, they're kind of vibing on this emotion of like, fuck these corporations that are taking advantage of us. They're not really. It doesn't feel like they're going pragmatically for somebody who's going to actually solve a problem. You know what I mean?
Right.
Again, the analogy. They don't feel like an employer looking at a prospective employee and gauging how likely they are to perform well at the job. They're just sort of riding that emotion of like, we're this group and fuck this.
Yeah, it's like, it feels like just standing by your word, but not really having an agenda. It's kind of like I hate to bring it up again, but the defund police thing, the passion over that one term. It's like, why why are you so upset about this? Like, you have to have your brand. Like, it's just weird. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, so there's that sort of prioritizing cultural preference over actual performance and actual addressing of problems. This other thing, I don't know, maybe I'm being unfair, but I remember thinking about it when I was like in high school and college, and looking back over the last few years, wondering if this is part of the problem. So it felt like at some point the line between facts and opinion became way too fucking blurry. And so I would hear people go back to Republicans, you hear are actually pretty radical ideas get spouted, and there wasn't enough pushback on these, in my opinion, because you just say, well, it's politics, it's just opinions, it's this, it's that. And it's like, some of these are not reasonable opinions to have, and we keep just ignoring it because, at least in America, we have this sort of attitude of everything is just an opinion and everybody is entitled to an opinion, so fuck it. It's like, but there are, there are objective ways to either defend or put down an opinion. I mean, even an opinion is subject to certain judgments that you can make objectively, and too often I saw everyone ignore what were really stupid or dangerous opinions because they were opinions. And a lot of times they weren't even opinions. Sometimes they were just actually incorrect facts, and we still kind of ignored them. And I feel like that helped lead us here too, this sort of resistance to really saying, if some guy comes up to you on the street and says, hey man, the moon is made of cheese, calling that stupid, because it's definitely stupid and incorrect. And I say that because if you look at the current political climate and you look at, Trumpism and the kind of things he believes and his group believes, a lot of them are just objectively stupid and incorrect. But a lot of them would have been seen as like a radical, 5-10 years before, but they've been allowed to like seep deeper and deeper into like the mainstream. And I just get up and wonder if we just didn't do a good enough job of stamping that out when it was starting.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just really weird. But hearing him talk about that stuff and pointing it out and just the culture, it was kind of sad, because it's like, yeah, no, this shit has been around for a while, and it's just gotten worse. And the fact that this is what, people who are supposed to, dictate policies that are supposed to help this country move forward, stabilize it, make sure that, you have a society that functions as well as it can or needs to function. Like, they can't even like right now, we can't even get the basic shit from them. Like, it's such a hard push to get some basics. They literally just had to do a 11th hour flash vote to keep the government open, because they were so fucking obsessed with blocking certain things in the stimulus that we could have had a government shutdown for the holidays. Think about that.
Merry Christmas, motherfucker.
Yeah, people working for the government could have been furloughed and all of that, again, because they want to play around.
But even that is a good illustration of what I was talking about, where we have this different expectations of politicians as far as a job goes. Like, most professions could not pull a move like that, where they just disagree too much to the point where they just stop fucking working. You know what I mean? If I'm at work and I'm trying to solve a bug or solve some design thing and I'm having a disagreement with another engineer, we don't just go home and see what we do about it a few weeks later.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't know enough about the process of doing that sort of thing, but the fact that we just accept that our main governing body in this country can just shut down like that, to me, it's just not right. Like you shouldn't be able to do this.
Yeah. But it's a tactic that they seriously have used. On numerous occasions in the last couple of decades, which is sad.
Yeah. So the expectations for politicians are they don't need to be professional. They don't need to actually know anything and be competent. They don't even have to actually do their job. It's like the lowest level of expectations you can have for a profession, for the most important job. It's kind of incredible. If only we could get away with that in our jobs, If I could just walk into work and talk like Trump and not be fired the same day.
Yeah. I don't know. That book enlightened me to some things that kind of saddened me. But it was worth hearing it because it's nice to understand and get a feel for a lot of those things. And just to see the process that it takes to do certain things like that. I griped about the whole it ending the way it ended. The book literally ends with the mission to get Osama bin Laden. But just knowing the depths and the level of thought that it took to get to that point, stuff like that, everything, the thing I enjoy the most about the book is his willingness to give you the deep overview of what happened and not just. It's funny because I was looking through I guess some reviews and they were saying how one person was mad at him because they're like, come on, dude, you can give yourself some credit sometime. Because he kind of does defer a lot to when it comes to his successes. When he talks about them, he defers patting himself on the back, so to speak. But for me, I think that's good because he doesn't focus on just writing about his accomplishments. It's more about writing about how certain things happen. He literally talks about how DACA first failed and how he didn't get enough votes. And he was more focused on the idea of why it failed and how it put certain people at risk. Because he talked about Senator McCaskill and how she was at risk of losing her seat and how he was shocked at how she voted for it. Because he was like, it sucks, but if she votes for something like this, she'll lose her fucking job. And I'm asking her to risk her job. It's yeah, I know a lot of us like to say, well, no, that's what you're there for. If you believe in it, you do the right thing and all of that. But sometimes it's the weird, is this one thing worth me giving up the potential of working on 100 other things that are beneficial? That's the weirdness of politics.
I think it was brought up, when he was talking about the ACA, but he brought up this point that a lot of Americans feel like politicians are just these corrupt people that are in one or more, private companies' back pockets because they're getting all this kickback from them and all this shit. And he made the point that was certainly there are people who fit that stereotype, but there's also plenty of people who make very serious, considerations about self-sacrifice where, they know maybe voting on something might cost them their political career and did it anyway. And it is true that you never really hear those kinds of stories. As much as we want to put down politicians and whatever, they do make some brave votes that maybe cost them their seat in the next election and did it anyway because they thought it was the right thing to do. But do we ever celebrate them? Do we ever think about that? Not really. It's always sexier to talk about realizing that, hey, this politician is paid off by this company. conflicting interests.
Yeah.
And again, going back to the question of like, how did we get here? Our attitude toward politics and politicians are just kind of fixed like that, where we don't really praise, hard work and doing what's right and self-sacrifice. We just kind of look for what they're doing wrong.
Yeah, I think a lot of our selfishness comes into play when we think about things, because we don't take a lot of like big picture opinions when it comes to politics. Like I mentioned to you a couple of weeks ago about the guy that I know who big Bernie Sanders advocate, and one of Bernie's things was free tuition, but then he came to the realization that if they do give free tuition or they clear tuition debt, it's not going to reimburse people like him who have paid off a lot of their debt or all of their debt. And he was like, no, I don't want this to pass because it does nothing for me, basically. It's like, I paid my loans, so why should I want my tax money to go to this? And that's generally the attitude. It's just like healthcare. It's the reason why we didn't get a public option is because a lot of people in Congress had constituents that they listened to who said that they wouldn't want to pay for some, as Obama even said himself, a lot of times people don't like the idea of using their taxes as a means to pay to help people who can't afford the things that they can. Yeah.
But not even just that, but a lot of times they don't like the idea of using taxes to pay for things that aren't immediate. So things like environmental issues, because I think he brought this up during trying to address the oil spills where, they were getting shit for not doing even better. And it's like, well, y'all didn't want to pay taxes for environmental shit, so we're not prepared, right?
Yeah.
What do you expect? You pretty much made your voices heard that you don't give a shit about stuff like this until it's a problem, and then gotta freak out about. I mean, he wasn't saying it as cavalier as I am, but like, it is true. Like we as people don't value certain things as highly as we ought to because we're just not wired to. Like again, I was listening to that discussion about altruism and being charitable and whatnot. And they were making the point that, like Bill Gates' foundation against malaria or whatever, it saves a shit ton of lives, but, a lot of people are more inclined to give money toward, I don't know, saving the whales or saving some specific kid, even though providing bed nets in Africa, to stop mosquitoes and spread of malaria in Africa saves a shit ton of lives. It's just not a very sexy cause that people are that excited about. The cause isn't sexy, and that solution is not very sexy, so we don't really tend to feel that good about it. I think it's the same way with where we want to dedicate tax dollars, where there's certainly things that are important that we need to do for the preservation of the country, but mentally they're just not that interesting or sexy to think about. So if you say, yeah, we should give tax dollars toward this, people are going to say no. And then turn around 10 years later and wonder why we weren't doing better in that area.
Yeah. And then it was like, well, you're not doing enough. Why didn't y'all address this? It's like, well, when we tried, people got upset. And it's a very weird system. Like, we live in a country that likes to eat its own tail. That's just the bottom line. Like, we are forever eating our own tail. It's crazy. Like,
yeah, it's it is frustrating. That it is funny that you brought up the friend that doesn't like the idea that somebody else would help you get their education stuff paid off when they already went and did theirs. Because I have a friend that felt the very same way. I think when it was like a couple of years ago when Warren was really being considered as like a top potential runner for the next election, it's like okay, you paid yours off. And he's like, I paid mine off. I worked hard and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what the fuck kind of argument is this? Congratulations, you paid your off. So what?
Yeah, not everybody gets put in a position to be able to do that.
But even if they were, it's just like, look, I'm sorry you weren't born a couple years later when we might have actually done it, but it's a big fucking deal. Like, you paid yours off, good for you. There's other people in the future, like, we should never do it in the fucking future because you paid yours off. It's just totally irrational.
Kind of like,
any sense.
The idea is you do it because the previous generations found out how fucked up it was, and then somebody decided, yo, why are we doing this fucked up shit? Should we just do it a better way in the future? And that's how a lot of problems end up getting solved. It's like you see the mistakes that are being made, and then you fix them accordingly for the future. You know, it's not about retroactively doing, like, making amends all the time. Like, this ain't the Holocaust. You know, you don't need to come back and apologize to people who paid their loans because you know, are paying other people. It's not like, you know, you have to apologize to, like, people who experienced the things and apologize for you not acting, you know, immediately to protect them for that. It's totally different. It's not that serious for you. Be happy that you were able to, like, afford to pay off your loans and that you're in a great financial state. And be happy that in the future, people won't have to go through the same struggles. It's why I don't understand how some people have kids too, by the way. Because it's the nature, like, I know, like, we're not all each other's kids, but it's the same principle, like, people have for their kids or for people younger than them. You want to see them do better than how you did. You don't want them to struggle like you did. It's that concept. And, you know, again, with all the struggles I have, if I can see people coming up behind me never have to face these problems again, I'm happy. Because, yeah, you could say all the problems that you have, the struggles, builds character and all that. People shouldn't have to build character that way, by suffering. You know what I mean? Like, there are better ways to build character. Like it's just one of those, and I say that as being one of those arguments that people like to make against shit like that. You know, again, I did it. Why can't you?
It's self-centered because then they don't appreciate the things that they didn't have to do because the previous generation doing work. It's not like, you know, certain vaccines and medications we've developed over the years. The previous generation just kind of had to suffer and die through or maybe get over on their own. But, like, you don't sit there and be like, well, they had to do it, so I'm not going to take any fucking medicine. Like, it's just stupid. You already in your own life do not deprive yourself of the things that the previous generation gifted you. So stop acting so high and mighty about it.
Yeah, it's just fucking... It's just dumb. Very, very dumb.
Yeah. Like last week I had asked if you had gotten to the birtherism stuff because I wanted to bring up a point that Obama made about the media where, and I think this kind of feeds into some of my concerns I've been expressing about whether the media will keep paying attention to Trump afterwards, which is, I don't know how to say this. Like, I don't want to say the media has like some deep responsibility to report a certain way. I don't know. There's a consequence to the kind of things that they always focus on. Like, they'll focus on really dumb stuff because to Obama's point, like, they're focusing so much media attention on Trump when he's going through this birtherism stuff, constantly bringing it on for interviews and whatnot, when he had no fucking credible evidence of any kind to be making these points. You know what I mean? Yet he was on TV constantly talking, not just with Fox, but like plenty of legitimate news stations. So it's like,
yeah, because he went.
Why do you keep platforming this motherfucker when he doesn't have a point?
Right, because he went to the point where he actually went and got his long form thing, and he blasted them. He was like, There's so many other problems in the world that we need to be focused on, and y'all want to focus on this? Like seriously, why is this even in the discussion?
Originally, Obama had put out his short form birth certificate, which I didn't know there was multiple forms of a birth certificate, but when he did that, Trump was like, well, where's the long form? There's something on there he doesn't want us to see. And
wait, you didn't
eventually
know that?
Obama just relented and released that too.
You didn't know that?
Well, I guess I never thought much about my birth certificate. But
Yeah, no. The long form one is the one that your parents have to basically fill out at the hospital, so to speak. Like the information has to be recorded there at the hospital and all that. So they have everything like date of birth, height, gender, all that stuff, expanded out where you were born, the hospital, all that. It's like I've seen mine somewhere, somehow. And it's like, yeah, it's just like it's not super long, but it's just an expanded set of information, basically. Whereas like the birth certificate that you generally carry around, it's just like, yeah, I was born this date. This is my official name. This is where I was born. Boom, here. Yeah.
He gave me a bit of an education in that, but
yeah, like the long one is like both your parents' names and all their information and all that shit. It's like, yeah, no, your short form is just you.
Yeah, there was no legitimacy to this claim that was worth touching. Yet, again, news organizations wouldn't just leave this motherfucker alone because, let's be honest, there's bad incentives. Like he clearly got attention. I'm not saying they're like hungry for ratings and all this shit, but it's not even just the ratings problem. Like there's something in people that like to see a train wreck of some kind and just like to focus on it. Sorry, somebody sent me something. It's love to focus on this sort of circus that a guy like Trump creates, whether it's productive or not. And, also to a different point, they did not fight back hard enough against him saying absolutely stupid shit. They just kind of like have these weak little responses like, well, that's not true, that's blah, blah, blah. But like,
because they know there's entertainment in the drama, and that's where we are. Like, I'm sure you've seen me plenty of times complain like about the fanboy shit. But even I know, like, me complaining doesn't matter because these people are going to continue to do it because to them, there's something entertaining about, even if they don't necessarily believe in it, it's just something entertaining about getting at on someone's nerves about my product better than yours and things like that. And this goes for so many subjects in life, including this. It's like, oh, we like to watch soap operas. And it's gotten to the point now in society where we want a soap opera out of everything if we can get it. Because we enjoy it so much. Like everything has a clash. Like to see something clash is much more acceptable because it's a form of entertainment to us now in all walks of life. And it's a ridiculous premise because this is serious life and death shit. Like politics, like you're trying to get rid of somebody and stop them from doing their job with some silly shit like this. Like, come at him if you feel like he, I would say even the silly shit like, oh, he wants to pass the Dreamers Act because he's soft on immigrants and he wants them to take your jobs. Like, I prefer that over shit like the birther stuff getting his, exposure.
and maybe I was too harsh last week, but that's kind of why I mentioned Cooper, sliding in that little crack at Trump misspelling some shit in a tweet or whatever he had said, where it's like, is this show about entertainment or facts? Like, what the fuck is your problem? Like, it's exactly like, leave it alone, send this dude in the trash heap and move on.
But no, I've said it a couple of years ago.
Cooper.
Yeah. But no, I've said it a couple of years ago is that social media has made media, like regular media, adjust to the fact that people just want the quick hit, dramatic bullshit. It's the reason why you get so many more tweets from media places that don't actually give context to the story, where they'll say some dumb shit like, Trump fucks, dog owner, and it's like, what? And then like you find out like Stormy Daniels had a dog or something like that. Okay, why'd you put something like that? Like, or it makes no sense. It has nothing to do with the subject that they're talking about. I know that's a really bad example, but it's just stupid shit like that. Like, you're wondering, like, what is the big deal about this? Like, or at least you're someone with sense. You're wondering, what is the big deal about that? And then you was like, oh, he cheated on his wife with a porn star. She happens to own a dog. What the fuck you need to put the dog shit in there for? Like, and even then, you're like, why are we talking about who he's sleeping with? It's like they layer dumb shit on top of dumb shit all the time, and it bothers me.
Yep. But and again, the other focus of that is just because I remember the first few years of Trump's presidency, this sort of debate over just straightforwardly calling him a liar. When he would say certain things, because they get this criticism that like you need to stop saying that he's not being truthful or whatever the common phrase was, and just call him a liar. And it's like, this shouldn't be a debate because he is lying. Like he's saying things that are like literally not factual, and you're not being forceful enough about pointing that out.
That's a much better example than my stupid example, because that is layering dumb shit on top of dumb shit to the finest. Why are we debating about something that we know is true? Why not just not pay attention to him when he lies? Or just say, oh, he's lying, moving on to the next story.
I think some of the instinct to want to be fair kind of played against them too, where it's like, all right, this is bullshit, but like with the trade war stuff with China. Like, yeah, it's bullshit, but China is a bad actor. So let's talk about this. It's like you kind of keep, like Trump makes a point that might be adjacent to a real point. So then you kind of shift your focus to the real point and start talking about that a lot. And then it kind of makes him sound a little bit more legitimate, because not because you're addressing what he said as though it's a good rational point, but because you started with what he said and then started talking about real shit, where it's like, you should separate those things. Like, just start off saying he's full of shit and then kind of move on and address this later. Because you're kind of mixing the messages here, making him sound legitimate in a way that he wasn't.
Yeah. It's just a lot of stuff that you throw out there like this is important. Like, we know he's a bad person. He's not an honest person. It's everything's just fucking chaos. But
so that I don't know if
good.
Definitely fix it. I don't know what to do to fix the media problem, but I hope there's some sort of solution, because I think that's a big part of the issue.
It'll slightly get fixed with Biden, as there will be less sensationalized stories as far as like the drama. Like, Biden's just like they will still kind of attempt, like when the story came out about Biden saying that he didn't think that he thought that the defund police hurt them, and that his whole thing is he wants to just reform police. And people were like, oh my God, he blasted it. And it's like, people with sense who listen to it was like, well, yeah, he makes a fucking point. But what? They're going to always try to find some drama. But it's going to not be as wild, I would say, because you're not going to get that as many instances to focus on it. At least I hope you won't. Fingers crossed, please.
It can use a lot of things, like fucking stop with these crazy ass headlines that you're doing that are like misleading as fuck, or inciting outrage, or I don't know. Some of these headlines are fucking wild, and then you go and read the article and it's like, really? now I feel tricked into reading this. I was just dishonest what you did.
Yeah, because it's like I just read something that's just stupid. And that has really no serious bearing.
Everyone does it. But a more fun story. I guess you finally got through. Where was it? The thing where Obama said he was going to crash the party. I can't remember what the event was. Some sort of.
It was the shit. I was almost just called the city, Copenhagen. It was a conference at Copenhagen where he was trying to like talk to different countries about climate change reform and stuff like that, and to get them all on board to where they would move towards the Paris Agreement. Basically, he wanted everybody to formulate like a plan to where everybody shares financially in funding for climate change. And the lesser he wanted all countries to get in, if you were a country that had financial struggles, the bigger countries would make up the shortfall for you. And that was one of the things that a lot of countries were having issues with. So he went around, he was talking with Angela Merkel, all those people from the EU and stuff like that. And of course, China was there, and he wanted to get them on board because being the second largest economy, they needed to be on board too. But they were bullshitting, and he had a meeting with, I forget what position he was, but the official that was representing China there. And the guy was non-committal, but he was like, we'll talk about this later. So Obama's looking for him to talk about it again. And he's like, yo, where's this dude at? I can't find him. We were supposed to meet. He sends his people out to look around, and like they'll come back and they're like, yo, so apparently the rumors are that he left, but we don't think that he actually left. I think that he's just ducking you. So he was like, yo, find out where he is and let me know. So they find out he's having a meeting somewhere on another floor after Obama finishes doing what he was doing in between. And Obama's just like, nah, we got to get this shit done. So he looks at one of his aides and like, when's the last time you crashed a party? And they were like, it's been a while, but this should be fun. So like him, Hillary Clinton, and his aides basically go up to the floor, unannounced, walk into the like people's meeting and like, hey, I finally found you, so we can sit here and we can discuss this. And hold on, you got muted.
He walked in because he was looking for that specific guy, and he was like, I have been looking all over for you. Like, he didn't just bust in. Like,
right. He just like, hey, he just like so nonchalant, like, hey, there you are. Yeah, glad to see you. Just like it was so nonchalantly, so like, hey, get this, like, he just like ran into a friend. And they sit down and he literally just lays down the law to them and just like lets them know what he's going to do to make this problematic for them if they don't get on board. And one of the guys who's with the leader of the Chinese delegation got up and started cursing Obama out in Chinese. That's what I assume he is, because they never said what the translation was. But he's sitting there going off, and the dude like in charge puts up his hand and tells him to be quiet. And he looks over to his like translator, and he starts talking. And the translator literally goes, well, what he says is not important. The important thing is we understand what you're saying, and we're on board with you. And like they pretty much conceded to what Obama wanted. And the best part is when they walk out, and like he says his body man, Reggie, is like looking at him, and he goes to like, boss, that was some real gangster shit you didn't do right there.
So the reason I bring that story up is because, you talked about this sort of like the tone Obama takes where he's not like patting himself on the back enough and blah, blah, blah. I think one part of Obama that we often didn't think about or get to see is this kind of side. Like I know his his code name with the Secret Service was Renegade, I think it was. Well, I guess I never really realized like how apt that name kind of was, because just that entire story is attitude the entire time, where they finally find him and he looks at Hillary like, "This is the last time you crashed a party," and I'm like, "Is this motherfucker serious? Like, can he just do that?" And then he just walks in like he owns the place, and I won't say threatened them, but kind of threatened them, where he was like, "If we don't come away with the deal, I'm gonna go outside in front of the cameras and make life pretty difficult for you." And I'm like, can he do this? Like, just this sort of, and it's certainly not the only time that he's like that throughout the story, but it's certainly not something you tend to think of from Obama. Just
No, because he's always was like, and he even admits as he gets later into the book that, right, we were always trying to do the bipartisan thing, always trying to do the right thing, and this is like, at some point you come to realize that you really can't do it with these people. But that's the thing. He always was just trying to do what's best for everybody and like be as diplomatic as possible and make things work for everybody. But the instances when he would just be like, "Look, it has to be this way, and this is the way it's going to be. Either you with it or you get rolled over." Like, those were some cool moments. And I think that's where a lot of his criticism comes. A lot of people feel like he should have done that more. I totally understand why he didn't like sell out and do that all the time, because you can't really do that without repercussions. But, it was cool. It was cool.
Yeah, I think it was around like the messaging around war efforts or whatnot, but he'd come to some agreement of some actions, and like some officials went out there and were voicing objecting opinions to him, and he's like, "Get them on the phone." He pretty much just like dresses them down. I think Hillary was one of them. He's like, "Look, I get that you guys don't agree with this, but I've made a decision, and I don't need you guys out here, counteracting me."
Oh yeah, it was when the one of the generals said something about I think it was either something they were doing in Afghanistan or Iraq. I remember that. Yeah.
He's like, "I've made a decision," and get that guy on the phone and tell him like, because I think that general had suggested that he wasn't speaking in like an official capacity or whatever, and he's like, "I don't give a damn what capacity he's speaking. He needs to shut his mouth." I'm like, okay, Barry is not always a nice man. But again, it's just kind of the combative side to him that you didn't really see that much.
Yeah.
Not that we were in a position where we would need to, but like it's the kind of stuff that you would not be surprised to see Biden do, just because of how he kind of appears on TV. But it's kind of weird to see it from Obama somehow. And I don't want to go a lot, but I just say like one last thing that I thought is really interesting to listen to, and I think is one good reason people should listen to that book is. You look at Trump, who has zero filters, zero inhibitions. He just kind of spouts off whatever he wants. But you look at Obama, and he's always having to think about the consequences of what he says. So even when he might agree with a certain thing, like there was some country where they were doing a bit of a, there was civil unrest in that country, and he wanted to kind of back up the rebels or protesters or whatever, because it's kind of in the American spirit to do that, but he was sort of told, like, if you do that, that country is going to pretty much just say that those people protesting are being funded by America. There's going to be like a lot of bullshit. You supporting them, even though you agree with them, is going to put them in more danger than if you just keep quiet. And there's like a lot of instances like that throughout the book where, I'm sure the American people look at Obama and it's like, why didn't he say this? Why didn't he say that? Why doesn't he do this? Why doesn't he do that? It's like, pretty good reasons why he can't. Like, you can't just, even if he agrees with something, him acting on it might cause more of a problem for it than you realize. So this is constant like deliberation of not being able to act on certain things, or having to be very careful about how you say things in a way that obviously Trump felt no compulsion to do. So I think that's a reason for people to listen to the books, to realize that when a politician does or does not do something, it doesn't inherently mean that they're an evil person. They just have certain considerations you might not think about.
Yeah. You guys need to listen to that book or read the book. Like, seriously. As I said for the past couple of weeks, it's a good book to educate you and get to understand just how fucking crazy politics were.
And how high pressure it is to be a president that's not Trump. Just like I look at some of the things.
When you actually want to do your job, like it's not a good job. It's a good job when all you want to do is just cash in. Sure.
I'll be sitting there like, what can I say that won't result in a bunch of people dying today? You know what I mean? Like, if I say good morning, is that going to be a problem? Who's going to die if I say good morning? Like, it's just, God, I can't think of a more high pressure situation dealing with trying to prevent nuclear war, trying to deal with unrest in the Middle East, environmental issues, healthcare issues, education, like every possible issue, having to think about all of them and what you can do to make it better or at least not fuck it up worse. Like that's a lot. That is a lot.
Yeah, it is. All right, I think we have gone on long enough. So I think this is the last time we're going to recommend this book. If you don't understand how good it is to us, and then you'll never will. Just go read the goddamn book, please. Anyway,
or listen. Audiobooks are a thing, if don't use the excuse that like I'm too busy like washing dishes and cooking and shit. You can listen to a book while you do that stuff.
Yeah. Audiobook is good for driving. I can tell you that. Like, definitely did help the time pass in an interesting way.
You guys got long commutes? Because that's how I first got into it. Like, back when I was in Florida, at one point I was driving like an hour and a half back and forth. And I like music, but listening to the same songs got pretty rough at some point. So books really helped. No excuses. Check it out.
Yeah, no excuses at all. Anyway, I think that's going to do it. We've gone on for at least 3 hours. I said it was going to be short. I need to stop saying like we're going to try to do this quick, knowing that we never do. Like, it's just not within our nature.
Well,
we are like Obama. We don't know how to keep things like short and sweet. That's just the problem. Anyway, you guys, thank you for listening and watching. I appreciate you coming through as always. And guess we shall see you next time on the Reason Reborn. Oh, expect to get another podcast sometime soon. Just one of our random ones, because there's a lot of geek shit that happened, and I want to talk about the geek shit to end the year off, right? So expect that to come later. All right, I'm done talking. You guys take care. Have a good one, and we'll see you next time. Peace.